cream of Jesus.
There's a broad spectrum of magical belief systems around the world, from Christianity and Islam and Hinduism to New Age spiritualism. And while we may be able to write off some groups or practices as silly and harmless, the belief in angels as real and present advisors is much more complex and, ultimately, dangerous. Many religions share a belief in the afterlife, including concepts of heaven and hell as reward or punishment, but the belief in angels transcends strict religious dogma and is shared by people in nearly all magical belief systems. Believing in angels is professed by over 75% of Americans, 56% of Canadians, 51% of Australians, and even 36% of the British. The poll numbers are consistent and disturbing. But what should be equally disturbing is that we can take the question seriously. Being able to ask the question with a straight face may say more about us than the poll itself. Christians believe in angels. Muslims believe in angels. Hindus believe in spirits. New Age spiritualists believe in angels and spirits. When you combine the numbers worldwide, across the spectrum of supernatural beliefs, the percentage of people believing in powerful magical beings is clearly in the majority. This should be a red flag for all of us. Add into the equation all of the other magical beliefs and thinking that individuals and governments use to guide their decision-making, and you have a universal denial of reality. If a person allows themselves a private fantasy about a spirit that provides some feeling of security, I think we'd all be tempted to think it was harmless. But let's say that this person is a military leader, or parents who turn to a god for faith healing a sick child, or planning their children's lives for the rapture. Suddenly this benign belief becomes dangerous for those around the believer. Even in its mildest form, delusional beliefs can be mentally disruptive, emotionally harmful, and, in the most extreme examples, deadly. Truth is, it's difficult to name a spirit world belief that is completely without potential harm. Adding the idea of consulting magical beings to your evaluation of an issue undermines the process of reason, and it reinforces dangerous self-glorification. At the very least, it's ineffective and a mockery of the rational mind. President Bush is quoted as saying that the U.S. invasion of Iraq was, in part, God's idea. The war cost about $15 million a day between 2003 and 2012. Private contractors outnumber soldiers, and the leading cause of death for soldiers is suicide. This divine plan has cost $1 trillion so far, and the needless displacement, damage, and deaths have yet to be fully known. Theocracies, by their very nature, attribute their decisions to God, as do churches in matters of contraception and women's health, or matters of faith healing or slavery or discrimination, or any of the atrocities today or in the past. It is attributed to God, God's plan, or the work of angels and demons. But national and religious leaders can do nothing by themselves. It takes a mass of people willing to suspend their collective disbelief in order to carry out atrocities in the name of magical thinking. Ordinary people who on the one hand believe themselves to be rational and intelligent, while on the other hand believe in magical winged creatures from outer space. Once you begin to accept that life is subject to mysterious creatures, and solutions to problems are too elusive for mortals, the disconnect from reality is easy to measure in a society. It shows in their priorities, in their collective lack of critical thinking skills. In the United States alone, the American government spends roughly $80 billion a year on weapons research. That's part of its $700 billion a year military spending package. But they only spend about $35 billion a year on medical research. Would rational thinking support any of these decisions? In America, the most powerful of the magical thinking societies, sympathy comes from all sides about the distressing tragedies around the world. But with access to most of the world's resources, this is how we spend our money. Compound the waste worldwide, and you have an idea of how little thinking goes into decision-making on a global basis. Now, people around the world, as individuals, can be very generous, And I am not suggesting that people of modest means share their way into a state of poverty, or that people feel guilty about living a good life. But as societies, it is not rational to allow children to suffer the inequities of war and poverty, disease and death, while we spend $5 billion a year on ringtones for our phones. Is it really too much to demand that every child is entitled to the same level of care we give to our dogs and cats? Would a rational, critical thinking society make these choices? Multiply this kind of thinking by people in all walks of life, and you find a large population of people unwilling to take personal responsibility for their actions. The disconnect leads to levels of dysfunction and needless suffering which is staggering to the imagination. Magical thinking distorts reality and corrupts the way we consider choices. It is a roadblock to critical debate. It doesn't matter if the speaker believes in the supernatural or not. Invoking gods or religious morality kills thoughtful discussion. Simple issues like healthcare and contraception become political nightmares for policymakers. Prayer for victims of disasters replaces organized and meaningful relief. Some in need are forced to adopt supernatural beliefs as a condition for access to needed resources. At the very least, magical thinking allows the believer to turn a blind eye to the horrors in their own backyard. A society dedicated to using a scientific method, to using critical thinking and rational, dispassionate debate, allows for ideas to be fully expressed and examined. Without the filter of magical thinking, decisions can be reached on what people believe to be the common good. More importantly, it forces people to take responsibility for their decisions. There would be no gods or demons or angels to blame. People who know they will be held accountable for their decisions naturally tend to be more careful in their thought processes. Magical thinking is harmful, it's wasteful, and it can be deadly. It undermines our values and distorts our sense of reality. Magical thinking is found everywhere, not just in religions. That is why religion in itself is not the issue. Religions have turned it into an art form and use its power aggressively, but they are hardly alone in the misuse of people's fears. Supernatural beliefs and doctrine and dogmas exist around the world, and all must be resisted wherever they are found. Until magical thinking is removed from the public square, we, as people, cannot have rational discussion over desperately needed solutions. The friendliest Christian or most peace-loving Muslim you meet still believes in the afterlife, the idea that they will be rewarded for their faithfulness to their God. Equally important to them is the certainty that you deserve to be tortured for all eternity for being a rational thinker. They believe it is a good thing that you are being tortured, and they sincerely believe that they will blissfully enjoy the afterlife in heaven with the full knowledge of you being subjected to unimaginable and never-ending suffering. By the rules of their own religion, they believe this about their own children, that they should be tortured forever should any of them reject the magical belief system taught to them. This is the mindset of those you don't want to offend. It's irrational to appease these people. It's unhealthy to enable them. Now, we don't propose atheism. That position is the inevitable result of critical thinking. We don't need to deconvert anyone. We need only demand that problem-solving and public policy are made without the assistance of ghostly beings. We do not need to accept the position that it's mysterious, or God's will, or the work of angels or demons. We have a right to demand that people take personal responsibility for their positions. We propose rational thought. Ideas based on the examination of facts and evidence. Ideas based on our best understanding of the common good without the interference of supernatural delusions. Rational thought does not naturally prevent people from making bad choices. Poor information can lead to poor choices, but those choices can always be discussed and examined without the blinders of magical scapegoating. Better choices can be developed in the process. Demand rational thought. People will come to their own conclusions about invisible winged creatures hovering in the ether, but we must be able to talk about it openly and without apology. It would be dishonest to do anything less for the people we care about.